Hello, and welcome to part two of Beyond Sticks four-part webinar series. My name is Heidi Lewis, and I am the DC Area Director for Beyond Sticks. Also joining us from Beyond Sticks today is our founder and fearless leader, Chrissy Summers.
Hi, everyone.
We are super excited to have you all joining us today. Our mission as an organization is to empower youth through field hockey. And we believe that one of the ways that we can fulfill that mission is to support our wider coaching community through sharing education and resources. And so we are super stoked to bring you today's expert panel. And what we hope is that by the end of this hour that we're spending together, you will be able to pull out some nuggets of wisdom and take those back to your programs and use them there. Two quick notes before we intro our panel and get going. One, we are very happy that we're able to provide this as a free resource, but we're also a small nonprofit. And so if you enjoyed today's programming and find it helpful and are so led, feel free to go by our website and make a small donation. And point number two, we are a question-friendly organization. So as questions pop into your minds, go ahead and use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen to submit them, and we will get to as many as possible. So as I said, we are very excited for today's panel. It's a great group of experts in our industry. First up on the panel is Keith Waldman. Keith is the founder and owner of OPA Winning Teams. It's an organization that provides team building, chemistry, sports psych, and leadership activities to a variety of successful organizations. Everything from K-12 to collegiate programs to Fortune 500 companies. Keith has his bachelor's in psychology and master's in both social work and sports psych. Keith has been working with the National Field Hockey Coaches Association for a while now and is a frequent guest speaker at the NFHCA annual convention and coaches clinic. So welcome, Keith.
Thank you. Hello from Marlton, New Jersey.
And the next member of our awesome panel is Mary Beth Freeman. Mary Beth is a five-time national champion as both a coach and athlete. She is the owner and founder of Goal Line Field Hockey and is also the National Director of Sales for Nutrition by Corvus. Mary Beth coached Division I field hockey at Temple, Columbia, and Maryland, and she played her collegiate hockey at Old Dominion University, where she also received her degree in health and physical education, and she also has her master's in education from the University of Maryland. So welcome, Mary Beth.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And the last member of our panel is Steve Jennings. I think Steve would agree his career highlight was coaching me when I played at American, but he's done a few other things in his time. Steve was a member of the U.S. men's national team from 1991 all the way to 1999. And during that time, they won the bronze medal, the 1994 Pan Ams. They also played in the 1996 Olympics. Steve has been the head coach for the junior national program. He also has several stints as an assistant coach for the U.S. women's national team, including a trip to the 2008 Beijing Olympics. As the head coach of American University, Steve has amassed 267 wins and 11 Patriot League championships. He was the 2004 NFHCA Coach of the Year, National Coach of the Year, and he is also in both the NFHCA and USA Field Hockey's Halls of Fame. So welcome, Steve.
Thank you.
All right, and Steve, we're gonna throw the first question to you today. So could you tell us how you have kept your team connected during the spring and anything that you guys are doing now as we transition into summer?
Sure. We are primarily using Zoom as an app to connect with everybody in terms of having big group meetings or a meeting for our leadership council, which we're doing twice a week for the big team and once a week for the leadership council. That changed a little bit around finals time, and now that we're into our summer, we're doing that one time a week for each of those. But we're using Zoom, and we're also using FaceTime and whatever other apps we can to make sure we can have individual check-ins with our athletes, making sure they're okay as they navigated their academics and their non-hockey running to try to like stay in shape as much as possible, and then just their personal life. So we've used those primarily. And the last thing I would say that we've done, which is a bit unique, is we create our own website where the team could be able to access everything and upload different things that they found inspirational, meaningful, positive. So we have chapters in the webpage for A Daily Grateful. People can upload video or photos, and then we've been able to submit articles and video links to the team on different topics and different things to be able to keep them sort of connected and occupied during this time.
So Steve, can I ask a follow-up question with so the website is such a unique idea for your organization. So where did that come from? And, how is that, can you explain a little bit more how that's been received or utilized for team culture with American?
Sure. We basically, we have a staff meeting every day with our whole crew. And we brainstormed that it would be really good for us to have our own webpage. So one of our assistants, Kristen, took the lead on that and created a webpage on Wix. And then we created different aspects of it so that we could have it for different features. So we've included on that, we've had daily or weekly challenges on different themes. And then we brought in alums to come in as the judges for the top 3 and done some interviews with our alums so that they've been able to connect with other parts of the program and stay connected that way. So it could be something simple like hockey skills at home for a video, which everybody I think has been seeing or doing. But we also had one several weeks in where we had do something nice for your parents and surprise them. And the best surprise and the nicest thing for your parents won an award, because I think a lot of times student athletes in this age bracket don't realize how hard it is for adults. I think they're locked into understanding how hard it is for them. And it's certainly been very challenging, but we wanted to make sure that they were taken care of and providing for people who are giving them so much on a daily basis. So we did those things and have just tried to create a mixture of fun content and then content where there would be an educational or inspirational aspect to it as well. So our highlight video from the end of the year is linked up there. They already have that, but anytime they want to, they can watch that. So we just kind of brainstormed about what's the best way we could be connected and unified in a time that's really challenging, where you can't just do it so easily on a Zoom call. So that's been very successful overall, and they're still wanting to continue that through the summer. We just had a meeting with the Leadership Council today, and they're very keen to continue doing things on that throughout the summertime.
Awesome, thank you. Keith, could you maybe give us some additional ideas and examples of how we can proactively maintain meaningful connections with our team right now?
Sure. One of the things I've been emphasizing is just coaching from the heart. During this pandemic, people are very stressed, anxious, and I think it's important for coaches to do those frequent check-ins that Steve talked about, really making an effort to listen to your players and to empathize, try to connect with your athletes on that level, and not necessarily always trying to provide solutions or resolving problems. I know for myself at home, I have 2 daughters. They come home with an issue, and I'll come up with a solution, and they're like, "Dad, I don't necessarily need a solution. I just want you to listen." And I just think, that's an important part of coaching. I think just showing some empathy, checking in on how they're doing, how their families are doing. I think you also can do some ideas in terms of how to check in. Is you can do some virtual lunches. That's a good time to check in with your teams as a group. You can do virtual lunches individually. You can do that appreciations. You can set up a time. We're just gonna talk, appreciate what's going on, things that you're grateful for. And then some virtual team building, which I'll talk about a little bit later.
Awesome, thank you. Mary Beth, what can we do right now as coaches to make this time simpler or easier for our athletes? Do you have any ideas on how athletes can take ownership and stay connected with things like workouts and nutrition while they're at home?
Sure. But first and foremost, I want to take a second and thank Heidi and Chrissy for getting us here. It was a very warm welcome, and thank you for that. And I think I speak for so many people when I say thank you for what you guys do for our sport. So I think it's fantastic. So thanks for having us. I think it's a great question, Heidi. I think part of that is knowing that we're all in the same boat, right? This is not something that some people are used to and some people aren't. Everyone is going through this at the same time. And very much with like Keith said in regards to, we have to just listen sometimes and not so much have the answers, because we don't, we're all going through this at the same time. So I think understanding that we're all in the same boat, and this is a trial and error and self-discovery as we go through this, and giving ourselves the okay to not know answers is really important, right? But on the flip side of that, I think we've heard a lot of people say in a lot of different platforms that we want to leave, better than we came in. And I don't necessarily think, even though this is a hockey community, that needs to be hands-on technical work. We can be better, to your point, Heidi, about our workouts and our nutrition. So come time to put a stick or pads back on, whatever the case may be, that we're hitting the ground running, and I don't want to say, waste. We were very productive in the time that we had to strengthen ourselves to get us to where we want to go, and to use those skill sets in the future in regards to hockey. So I think that this time has really shown a lot of innovation from a lot of different people about how to stay connected with workouts, with nutrition, and how we can keep that connected. So many great things on social media, on Instagram and TikTok. I don't know if that's the right terminology, TikTok. But there's so many things that you can do as far as the hockey piece, and watch these small little videos. I think Beyond Six is doing a little skill set as well, in virtual hockey. So things that don't necessarily take a whole lot of time, but are equally as important. I'm talking about getting maybe some AstroTurf and putting in the backyard, or something along those lines to keep our skills fresh, right? And keeping our workouts, even though small in size, big in the grand scheme of things. When it comes to nutrition, that's the other piece, right? We do, as coaches, and as a current coach on the panel with Steve at the Division I level, there's always things that we can be focusing on nutrition, and hopefully we'll get into more of a conversation about that later. But so if you think of it along this way, coaches kind of give the playbook for corners and skills. Nutrition essentially is pretty much the playbook for our bodies, right? So we have to make sure we're doing due diligence and learning about the nutritional side of things. And that's where this conversation becomes interesting, and how we can talk about nutrition to our teams without having this stigma or making it taboo, or, nutrition with young females. It doesn't have to be that way. And the way that you make it different is by putting it in front of people and having open and honest conversations about what it can do for our bodies to help get us to be better athletes. So there are multiple things that we can do as far as nutrition is concerned, and I'll happily go through them when we continue on.
Okay, I have a couple. So I'm the interrupter in this panel. I have a couple follow-up. That's my role. So, you're talking about the ways people can get out there and do field hockey and play field hockey. And a question we had our last seminar was about injuring yourself or overuse. So, Mary Beth, you could talk about it, or Steve, sort of, I know we talked about this beforehand, like not having too much of a field hockey focus, or like allowing athletes to push themselves without sort of asking them to be doing things that are too much during this time. So maybe I'll throw that to Steve. Where's the balance in actually doing field hockey during this time?
We've taken an approach where we want them to first and foremost be physically well. And then the second part is to take care of their mental health, and the rest will kind of come into place. So we've not asked anybody to go out and sneak onto fields and do things that would be inappropriate. We want them to just to take it easy. What's really cool is, I think if you give people some space and they love the game, which is one of our main jobs, to help facilitate a love for the game, they will start playing in the driveway. They will start going out and seeing what they can do, and they might experiment with things. And so we tried to be sensitive to when they were feeling maybe more stress and pressure from the change of an environment, fear over the economy, maybe for their family's sake, and then finals. But as that's gone on and now more things are opening up in different capacities, there's a real hunger for them to play. And I think you get so much more out of that when it doesn't feel like, for lack of a better word, a job. This should never feel like a job for them. This should always feel like this is great. Some days are tougher than others. Of course, I'm sore or I'm tired or we lost the game, but it should always feel like a really great joy for them to participate in the sport. So we just give them space. And then as things change a little bit and they have some more room to go out and do it, or they have questions for us, we're more than happy to help them with creative solutions for how they could be better at their skills or tactics from a unique situation.
And Steve, there is a question from the crowd asking you to explain your leadership council, which I think is great. I think that culture, this is a great opportunity for culture, but if you can explain how your leadership culture works, as they say, is that something in place of captains or both? What's that situation for your team?
In our spring season, we don't actually have captains. So we're completely captainless at that time, but we do have a leadership council group that we bring some people onto to try to develop their leadership skills. It doesn't mean that they'll be voted in as the team votes for our captains. So we have no idea who will be voted the next year, but we pick people who have exhibited strong leadership tendencies or we think will become leaders in the future. It's good to have a balance of people who are living on campus or off, different classes, different people that have different strengths. So we bring them together and we will do workshops on books, articles, conversations about challenges within the team, role playing to see who can solve different solutions in different ways, and incorporate their vision as to where they think the team needs to go. So we typically do that only in the spring, but in light of where we are right now with this, we put it out to them and they wanted to continue doing this work in the summertime. So we've maintained that, and they have brought up topics for the next several meetings. Some of them are scenarios about figuring out who would do what or how it would resolve certain scenarios that we experience maybe on the field. And other things are figuring out what everybody's best strengths and weaknesses are within the leadership group and how they can have a united vision to take care of challenges that we may experience or build our culture for the incoming class and make sure we're ready to go whenever that is.
Awesome stuff. And then Keith, I have a follow-up question for you. I will stop interrupting at some point, Heidi, I promise. I don't promise. I feel good. Okay. So, we talk about ways to stay connected, and I think a lot of, we're on Zoom now. Like Zoom has sort of become the default, right? And that's what we think about. Like we need to get on Zoom or we need to do these things. I mean, I know as adults, some of us are zoomed out is a phrase that exists now, but maybe for kids, there's a tech limit if they've been on all day. So what are some ways that you can think of that ways we can stay connected that are a little bit more outside the box?
Sure. And I think one of the things that, over the last 3 weeks, I've been training coaches on how to do virtual team building. And one of the things that has come up in discussion, I think we all need to embrace being comfortable with being uncomfortable. I've talked to coaches about conducting some activities and they're like, I'm very uncomfortable with that. That's not my wheelhouse. It's a little touchy-feely. It's not something I'm good at. And I just think, with the new normal, for us to grow, whether myself as a consultant or as a coach, we need to embrace being comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's the way we grow. That's the way we're going to grow professionally. And to be honest, someone asked me 3 weeks ago, hey, when are you doing a Zoom session? I'm like, Zoom session? There's no way I'm doing a Zoom session. I'm not even comfortable being on FaceTime.
Here you are.
When I got married, it took me, and I'm kind of sharing some of my own personal quirks. When I got married, it took me 4 weeks just to watch my wedding video. So as 3 weeks ago, I was like, there's no way I'm doing a webinar. But I realized in order for me to personally grow, I need, and that's something I think it's important to practice what we preach. I'm always working with teams and we talk about, to grow as an athlete, to grow as a team, to grow as a person, we need to embrace being comfortable being with uncomfortable. And it's really weird. I've been doing a lot of Zoom the last few weeks. You talked me into this webinar and I'm actually really excited about it. So to give you some examples, I think it's really important during these times for people to stay connected. People are feeling very isolated. They may be missing field hockey. Field hockey could be a big part of their identity. Being an athlete is a big part of their identity. They're losing their families. Team's another form of family. So they're probably feeling very less connected. So I put together a series of virtual team building activities, and I was prepared to give a couple of examples. So, Christy, you're looking for a couple of examples? Is that what the question is?
Like one or two that, you know,
Yeah.
I think sometimes as coaches, like we're outside of our comfort zone and we're learning
Mhm.
Zoom and do this stuff, but there's things sort of that you can do that extend beyond it. So it's not just getting on Zoom to get on Zoom, you know,
Yeah.
like what can we do that is actually creating connection rather
Well,
than
and it's team building with purpose, Zoom with purpose.
Mhm.
And it's being able to conduct some activities that actually have some lessons that you want to carry forward into your season. I look at this as an opportunity. You know, a lot of times during change, we focus on what's being taken, you know, what we don't have versus what's added. So I'm looking at this as being able to uh, conduct some activities with your teams that can make you stronger as soon as you hit the field. So I think it's an opportunity for people to get to know each other and to connect on a deeper and a personal level. An activity that I have been coaches I've been working with, what they've been an activity they've been using. It's called the penny for your thoughts. The coaches would ask their players to bring a penny to their Zoom meeting. It cannot be no older than 10 years from the current date. And, you know, if it's 10, 11 or 12, that's okay, but not more than that, around 10 years from the current date. And then each athlete will introduce their coin, they'll say the year, and they were going to describe something that happened that year to them, something interesting that happened, or something that had a major impact on their life that year. Or maybe there was a world event that had an impact on them in that year. I actually conducted that activity with the team a couple of weeks ago, and some of them shared some very personal things, whether you know, it was a personal event in the family, maybe a divorce, someone passed away. Hey, maybe it was the first time they played field hockey. And I think when someone shares something personal, I think that should be applauded. You know, they're taking that risk, they're being vulnerable at that point. And, you know, and then it's being able to have a conversation maybe with your team about risk taking. Like if you don't take risks on the field, you're not going to grow as a team. You're not going to get better. You're not going to get better individually. And that can lead to the conversation of what keeps us from taking risks on the field, or what can we do to help us take risks on the field, which is supporting each other. A lot of athletes worry about being judged. And then we talk a lot about having the value of a judgment-free zone and being able to support each other to take risks. So that's a value that they can take with them into the season. So there's some lessons that you can learn during some of these Zoom meetings or some of these Zoom team building meetings.
And I'm done
Awesome.
interrupting, Heidi. You can go back.
You're going to interrupt later. We all know it.
That's true.
So I want to grab onto a phrase that Keith just used, and it's being comfortable with the uncomfortable. And Steve, I know from real life, that is a phrase that you definitely use a lot at AU. And so I'm wondering how that's played into what you've done with the team this spring. And then are there any other phrases or mindset shifts that you've really been using with the team to help them through this time?
Well, that's something that's one of our standards, the be comfortable being uncomfortable. And so we've relied on that a lot. Typically, the athletes have used that to describe maybe how it feels to play a big game, or to have a scary meeting with the head coach in the office, or something along those lines. Maybe as they get to graduation, going into the real world. But we're trying to build their tolerance to stress, and this situation really obviously is unprecedented for them. I would say what we've been trying to put them in touch with in that same way is trying to help them understand what normally happens to people in these moments of stress. So in one of our group Zoom meetings, we asked who was feeling higher levels of uncertainty and asked them to raise their hand or show it in some fashion, who was feeling more stressed, more anxiety. All of them, of course, were. And then we use that to talk and facilitate a conversation about what happens when we're feeling that way. And one of the main things that happens is that we tend to withdraw. And when we withdraw, we lose confidence, we lose motivation, we don't make the best decisions for our actions to help ourselves. And then we talked about the antidote to that is compassion, love, and being able to reach out. So we've tried to use that to help them kind of get a little bit more of a base to be secure, more sturdy, and go forward. We've talked to the athletes really a lot about, I think one of the challenges for athletes is that we always tell them they can accomplish anything they want, they can overcome anything. And this is a slightly different scenario. So we've changed our motto from can do, meaning we can do anything that's put in front of us, to a make do. And we want them to do the best they can in their circumstance. So If you can't do the running packet because you're under house arrest in your country or your state or your city, then we're finding out what you have available to you in the house, and we're creating a fitness program that will help you be able to deal with that. So we're not putting any sort of imposing things on them. We're just trying to help them navigate this period and go through. So that's been one of our main approaches, and that's tended to, I think, help people a lot, although there's still work to do in that as they want to return to normal, or the new normal, very quickly.
Can I ask a follow-up question? So I want to say, Steve, I love the Can Do to Make Do. We threw it up on our Instagram. We stole it. I credited you, don't worry. But I think you're talking about your summer packet. So a lot of us in the high school arena are at the phase where we've just started a summer packet. Maybe we gave it out early, or we're about to give out a summer packet. And I think a lot of us are mindful that there's such a diversity in where people are mentally or physically, or like what they can do. So how do we still push the kids that are sort of itching for that, while also having those conversations, or being able to be cognizant that there might be an individual who, for some reason or another can't do the workout packet? How are you navigating sort of an even wider breadth of accessibility issues on your team?
Well, I think you have to meet people where they are. I mean, I think that's one of the most important things. So you have to find out where they are and make sure you know what they're thinking, feeling, what they have access to. And then I think it's down to us and having flexibility. So we're lucky where I am. We have a strength and conditioning coach that's a specialist that we can utilize. We've trained ourselves a lot in physiology, so we have some background that we can use. But we have 3 separate groups, and I would say now, with the way that summer's played out for some folks, we probably have a 4th group, and those groups have different packets. So we know certain people are at the top end of our fitness, and they need more anaerobic versus aerobic base. Our back end needs more aerobic versus the anaerobic. So we have separate packets for people, and they, if we do it well, we facilitate an environment where they want to share how it's going, even though they may not be getting optimal results all the time. And that allows us to continue to shape and better their program. So we took it in chunks this year because of the suspension of our school kind of mid-spring. So we've been doing it a month at a time. We get to June, when we will assess the situation again and see if there are more tracks available, more gyms that are safely opening, et cetera. And then we'll kind of figure out the next part of the packet. So instead of giving them the normal full 13-week packet like we've done in the summers of the past, we've broken it up into separate chunks. And that's allowed people obviously to float between groups if their access to facilities or their challenges with, they might have somebody in their house that has COVID. So they really aren't safe to go out and exercise. So whatever it's been, we've tried to meet them where they are.
Awesome. So I will stop interrupting. No, I'm not going to stop
No,
interrupting.
you're not.
I'm going to stop pretending. Okay, I'm just going to be who I am. I'm an interrupter. So thinking through that, Mary Beth, you said earlier to, remove the stigma around nutrition. And this is something I've shared with you. And I think as coaches, we don't want to give kids too much, but also, we're mindful of how to have these conversations without, with our own personal fear. I mean, as female athletes,
Sure.
There's issues with disordered eating, and, we worry sometimes, and this is a personal worry of mine too, if I say anything, I'm creating a problem for young people with food, and it's the opposite is my intention, right? So how do you, especially for those of us kind of at the lower level, like the younger levels, how do we sort of have those conversations about health and nutrition in a way without our own fear getting in the way, would be a good way of phrasing it.
Yeah, and you're spot on. And like I said before, I think it's important that we keep putting it in the forefront, right? And we just talk about it in a positive way. And one of the ways that we can integrate a positively excitable experience for young women is by getting rid of the terms good and bad foods, right? And so when you say that food is good to eat, that food is bad to eat, I think that automatically adds a stigma to food, right? And listen, there's research out there that says 42% of girls in the grades of 1 through 8th grade, 42% have thought about them being thinner than they currently are. 42%. Right. I know. And that is staggering. That came out of some Drexel, the child and adolescent lifestyle science department, and so my point is there's so much research that's going on about this because it's real. But again, if we say that you can't have these foods or you shouldn't have these foods, that's like a blinking red button to young people or to anyone for that matter. You say you can't touch it, you automatically say, well, what happens if I do? Right? And so if we just get away or just shift our terminology from good and bad and lead by example. We don't want our young athletes or young women or young men for that matter, or anyone to have some tough food choices. Well, then ourselves, we can't make those food choices either. We got to lead by example and show them what a healthy lifestyle is. You can take cooking classes. You can take online cooking classes. You can make cooking fun. We have this mindset, the word fats, carbohydrates, proteins, fats. Ooh, dirty word. It's not. Vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, these are fat soluble vitamins that you need fat in your system to be able to digest them for your liver, your kidneys, for us females later in life, getting our skin a little tighter. Vitamin E, these are the things that we need to be able to do and know. And so education is a really important piece. Listen, a friend of mine told me that change is incremental, right? And so if you want change, you can't automatically think that you need to go to the extremes on day one. We need to begin to implement a mindset that is positive about food by leading by example, by good versus bad, by just saying moderation, understanding what carbs, proteins, and fats does to the body and how we need all those macronutrients to get us to where we want to go. You're not wrong too in that if we talk so much about it, perhaps it can go on the opposite end of things, Chrissy, right? So we want to talk about it in a way that gets them thinking and being positive about the experience, but not obsessing about it. And that's when things can maybe go on the opposite end, right? If we're so calorie oriented, or if we are focusing so much on, keeping track of what we're eating, that's when we lose sight of just enjoying the moment of what we're eating and how we got it and learning about it. When all this is said and done, going into the grocery store and being able to know what's down the aisles, what's in the front of it, what's in the back of it. We used to do that when I was coaching collegiately, taking them into the grocery store to teach them what the aisles were like, right? Because they've never really done it before. So again, education at a variety of levels is important, but to the point where we don't want them to get obsessive about it. So we have to keep it positive and lead by example as well. When we talk about this weight gain, weight loss, and we're really fortunate with what I'm doing right now with Corvus to be able to manage that in a positive way, right? With knowing what we're putting into our body and being able to track that and just knowing what we want to be able to have from an output perspective. We need to be able to refuel, and doing that in the appropriate way by customizing what we're doing with our food. So it's just a continual progression of living a healthy lifestyle, surrounding it just with positivity and really keeping it light and educational.
Awesome. Well, also, Mary Beth, we are having, someone's asking for information, so we might be hitting you up for a document to send through, because I think for a lot of us too, it's the language becomes important, especially in these packets that we hand out to our students.
Absolutely. Happy to do so.
Thanks.
Awesome. I'd like to circle back around to something Steve said when he was answering the last question about managing our players' levels of stress. But I think it's really important to acknowledge that as coaches, we're not magically immune to the same stresses that everyone else is having, and we're feeling the same pressure in terms of our mental health. So I'd be interested in hearing from all three of you what extra steps we can take right now to protect our own mental health and our own stress levels as coaches. Mary Beth, if you want to start us off.
Sure. I feel like there are some times when coaches or anyone in the professional world, anyone that is working from home, we think that, since we're not in our natural habitat, that we have to be doing more to make up for us being away. And I think that's when it can get a little unhealthy without filling every single spot with doing something either for our program or for our company or our organization, whatever it might be. And I think when you take time to evaluate what you want to get done that day and making time for you specifically to do what you want to do throughout the day while also managing these other things, that healthier balance makes us more productive as individuals, in my opinion. So I think from a coaching side of things, from the mental side, it's knowing that you don't have to fill every vacated second with thinking or doing something for the organization that you're not presently at because you're not presently there. You can still be equally as productive with managing your time throughout the day without feeling pressure to do more than you should because you're not in your home habitat. So that's just my take on the coaching side of things.
Awesome. Steve, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, we've been trying to talk to our team about it, and that's very important for us to emulate. And what we talk to them about is having a schedule, being disciplined with that, scheduling in time for joy. I'm making through my FaceTime conversations with our kids, I'm making them, if they don't currently have a job, have a class that they can pick whatever they want to do, and they have to tell me what they're doing. So usually I'm assigning 2-3 classes for like 50 minutes a day. And it can be on origami or Duolingo, teaching myself French, or reading the classics, or watching movies that made the Oscars, or playing ukulele. It doesn't matter, but I don't want them to turn into a sloth by just lying around all day watching Tiger King. I want them to have something that when this is over, which it will be, what can you have acquired, going back to Keith's point, what can you have gained during this time? And wouldn't it be cool if you could learn 300 words of French, so one day if you're ever in Paris, you can order from a menu. So we're trying to keep them scheduled. We have to do the same as a staff. And we're trying to help them control the controllables and not worry so far in the future, because nobody has the answers right now and everybody desperately wants that. But I think it's critical for all of us as coaches to stay in the present. People can worry about their job security. We can worry about our budgets. Are we going to be back in the fall? Are we going to have online classes? What's happening? And really, you can get yourself pretty tied down to some bad places. So we just try to stay in the present with discipline and creating room for gratitude and joy on a daily basis.
That's awesome. And Keith, do you have any tips on how
Yeah,
to manage our stress levels?
Hey, I can piggyback on that a little bit. I mean, first of all, it's okay to feel anxiety, stress, sadness. It's important to acknowledge it. I think, I was talking to someone the other day about this. How I look at this, athletics and being an athlete teaches you the skills, how to overcome adversity, such as the current crisis. I mean, think about it. How many times in field hockey crap hits the fan? All the time. You have to learn how to control the controllables. We don't control this pandemic, but what do we control? Which is kind of going back to what Steve said and Mary Beth were talking about, is your routines. Those are things that keep us balanced. Exercise routines are key. To me, being physically healthy equals good mental health. Okay, you have to have leisure routines. You have spiritual routines, sleeping routines. Should have family time routines. Over the last 2 months, I never spent so much time and ate so many dinners with my family. I would say it's amazing. I mean, that's something I think has been lost over the years. We don't eat with our kids. They're all in 20 different directions. I think just staying in routines. A technique I like that I teach athletes is focal points, things that kind of bring you back into a good place. Hey, when there's a time you're feeling a little anxious, or maybe you're like, you're really stressed or something you think you cannot do. It's like I always tell folks, pick an object that's going to remind you and put you in a good place. Maybe to remind you about that positive self-talk Steve was talking about. Like, for instance, I love wearing bracelets. That may sound weird for a middle-aged guy. Like, I have these bracelets. Like, one is called, this is something I give out to teams when I work with them. We talk about the importance of positive self-talk. I can, I will. One of my favorites these days is so what, deal with it. There's so much that we don't control. And part of winning the medal game, I had my fax machine go and my dog just ran into my office earlier. So I got all this other stuff going on.
Your wife calling you. She's like,
did 20 minutes before the webinar, my Wi-Fi went. So again, it's about controlling the controllables. What do we control? It's that 80-20 rule. 20% of what happens, 80% how we react to things. It was funny, I was talking with a coach the other day and she saw something in my office and she's like, what is that object? So I did like a little, a little show and tell. And then I showed her this object, and it kept me in a good mindset. It brought back a specific memory, brought me back to where I felt really good about something or about some work I did with this team. So it's important to have some focal points that kind of keep you centered and reminding you of your strengths and what you're good at.
Awesome. So I have a follow-up question, and I think, this relates to a conversation Keith and I have had, but I think it's for everybody, is sort of using this opportunity for your own mental health to sort of teach a forgiveness or a gentleness with yourself. And I think it also goes back to Steve's point, going from a can do to make do. As athletes, we're so used to sort of having that not being very forgiving of yourself mindset, and that helped us push through as an athlete. And then that's not necessarily going to work at this time. So, it's, to Mary Beth's point of, there's no good or bad food, and like feeling guilty about eating Oreos is going to set you up for a worse situation down the road. So, what sort of conversations have you either had with your staff or, with yourself about, routines are important, but being forgiving when the routine breaks with people as we move forward? I guess we can go to Keith, do you want to start with that one, sort of having some forgiveness?
I only heard
when it doesn't go according to plan.
Because things froze up. And that's actually a concept I talk to teams about. Because what I found for working with players, when they make a mistake on the field, they have a hard time letting go of it. That's one of the hardest things about staying in the moment, is forgiving yourself, being able to let go of the mistake, let go of the failure. One of a saying that I embrace is failure is fertilizer. Okay, we grow from our mistakes. We grow from situations like right now. So I think it's important to failure's information, forgive yourself, let go, move on, stay in the present. So that may have got to some of your, you froze up during the middle of what you were talking about. So I hope some of that does apply to your question.
Awesome. And then I have a question, and if anyone else wants to add on to that, but for probably this would be a good one for Steve about sports journals. A coach asked if you use a sports journal, so like after a game, on the bus, athletes write notes to each player, what they need from them, support them, good or bad. Is there any sort of ways you can talk about how you use sports journaling or written logs with your team during this time, or even, when you're in season?
We distribute a notebook in the beginning of everybody's freshman year, and then they get a new one in their junior year. Usually it takes that much time to fill it up, but there's different sections in there. And we always have them do reflections on many varied things throughout the year. It could be their thoughts on a video that we showed. It could be a debrief from a game. We usually meet in line, so our forwards meet together, our mids and our deep defense meets together, and they'll evaluate their game performance. It's totally team-led. We don't do that anymore. They do it on the bus when we're coming home or after a game, and they'll highlight a couple things they need to improve on, and then they'll highlight something they did well. Before the game, it would be talking to other lines about what the deep defense needs from the midfield to be successful today, things along those lines. So we use those pretty extensively. We haven't had them specifically hand something in during the summer, but we've given them articles where they've had to reflect on it, or a video, and we've had a conversation in our group Zoom chats, and that clearly they've been writing things down in their own notebooks, but we haven't had them hand anything in. So we use that, I would say, pretty extensively for reflection. And the coaching staff as well, everybody has things that they're always writing into journals to have takeaways that are positive.
Awesome. How about you, Mary Beth? What did work really well? Yeah.
Yeah, I think what Steve said was great. I have two things to add. So when I was coaching, we had two things that we utilized. The first thing was a post-game evaluation. So understanding that not every athlete is comfortable in speaking in group settings or in front of their teams, given if they played a good game, a bad game, the team won, they lost, whatever the case may be. We had these post-game evaluations where it was technical coupled with a tactical self-evaluation on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being when they had the opportunity to do it, they did it brilliantly, or if they have the opportunity to do it and they gave themselves a 1, that means that they did not say that they did well in their execution of that technical or tactical skill. So they would fill them out at the end of a game, and a little section for comments if they wanted to add why they felt that way, or they could just circle the number. And then they forwarded it into the staff. So what the staff was feeling about their performance, we wanted to see if it matched up to what they self-thought about their performance. And if it coincided, great, everyone's on the same page. If I thought that individual had a great game, but they're giving themselves all 2s, wondering where that disconnect is. So we would have a conversation with that individual, be like, listen, this is what we're expecting you to do, but you're not thinking that you're doing that. What's the deal? And then having that conversation to make sure you're on the same page. So we had a post-game rubric that we did, and it worked pretty well. The second thing that we did was a post-practice evaluation. It was 6 questions. It was an anonymous Google Doc that just had something that they put in. How much sleep did you get the night before? How difficult did you think practice was? What additional stressors do you have in your life with academics, social, or athletics? And it was a boom, 30 seconds, they filled it out and they give us the information. So if we were trying to plan a hard practice, but yet the average of the anonymous submissions was a 3, then we need to up our game a little bit with what we think our hard practices are, right? So it kind of gave us information on, listen, we're not sleeping well, and we didn't have a great collective practice. Maybe they're coincided. We didn't eat well. Why did we not eat well? I'm just saying that all that really coincides. So that was just something that we did for a post-game evaluation, and then a post-practice, which really took 30 seconds, and it was all anonymous in that regard. So that worked out really well for us too.
So Mary Beth, when you did those are awesome. What really great ideas. Thank you for sharing. So for the post evaluations, how often did you find that there was a misalignment? Like, or did you find that people got better at it? Like the freshmen were like totally off, or newer players of the team? How did you, and then what happened when that was off? Was that like you would pull someone in for a conversation that week, or how did you address when there was huge disparities between what the coaches thought and the players thought?
Yeah, so first part of your question is, it didn't matter if it was a freshman or senior, because I think it depends on how that athlete learns and what expectation they place on themselves. And I think that regardless if you're a freshman or senior, everyone's going to have a varying spectrum of what that looks like for the individual. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So in that regard, it didn't really matter. If there was a difference of what we thought versus them, we'd absolutely have that conversation. And it might be on that same bus ride home if it's an away game, because I don't want that to fester. I don't want them to have the rest of the weekend thinking that they didn't have a great game when their expectation was different than what we wanted, right? So it provided a platform for them to share without speaking if they weren't confident in doing that in a group setting. And it also allowed for the coaching staff and athlete to make sure that they were on the same page by continuing the conversation and leading the conversation being on the same page.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I can have, unless Heidi has a final question. I was going to throw a final question.
Go for it, Christy.
Thanks, Heidi. So I guess in our sort of closing, the whole point of this was to prime your teams for the fall, right? And so the fall is still a big question mark for us. So, and yet, if you're on this webinar, you clearly care as a coach, you're going above and beyond. So what is, I guess, some of your final advice, or what you would say to these coaches that are really looking for something to do with their coaches? And if you're going to prioritize how you get ready for the fall, does it look the same? What does it look different? Kind of what's your advice to the coaches that are here who want to do well by their teams come the fall, if you're going to wrap it all up? Can I put the pressure on you, Steve, to start with that question?
Sure. Well, I think, first of all, we have to have a high degree of flexibility, and we have to stay ready. And being ready means until you have some announcement from your state or your local district or whatever, you don't know what the future is going to be like just yet. So what advantages, what are you taking advantage of now? What are the silver linings you're finding? How can you be improving your skills in different ways so you can be ready to be a better coach when you come back? We talked to our leadership group today, and one of the things I talked to them about was some of the things that Phil Knight from Nike talked about. And one of the main principles they had when he started the company was, our businesses change. change is everywhere. Change is all the time, whether you like it or not, change is happening. And so I think you really need to dive into how can I change for the better and how can I be adaptable to the situation. And one of the other big things you talked about is it won't always be pretty. And most of the time, our coaching or our games, our practices, our attempt to develop young people into their best selves, that's a pretty messy process. And I think we have to stay locked into understanding that and being comfortable with that. And if we do that, I think it can help us navigate through the time until we have a better idea about what certainty will happen in the fall, or if it'll be pushed to the spring or whatever. And we'll just have to kind of meet that challenge when it arrives.
Embrace the mess. I love it. How about you, Keith? What are your final parting words?
Very similar to Steve. I think flexibility is the name of the game. I think we have to embrace and accept the new normal. And I just think if we don't, we're going to really struggle. And I think we have to look at what we can gain during this time rather than focusing on what we're losing. I think that's really important. I think it's important to, again, continue to stay positive, work on those, working on those life skills, control the controllables, the importance of positive self-talk. You're gonna have days we're gonna have to fake it to make it. All right, things are gonna ebb and flow. We're gonna have our peaks and valleys, but I think we have to embrace and accept the new normal right now, and and focus on the opportunities. I think there's a lot of opportunity to grow and to be more effective as a coach or as a professional.
Awesome. Thank you. How about you, Mary Beth? Final word.
I think we're all on the same page of everything is going to be different, and that is okay. And different and change, though at first could be hard, it could be more positive than what it was in the past. And I think everyone is on the same page of there is no normal now. We are driving what our new normal looks like. So my biggest thing would be self-care would be number one, whether that is physical or mental or both, hopefully both. If we don't get ourselves or keep ourselves in the best place possible so that when we are able to hit the ground running, we are as healthy or as in best shape as possible as we can be leading into that, those are variables that we don't have to be worried about, right? I know everyone that's on this webinar, when it's rainy outside versus when it is sunny and beautiful, I know our bodies and our minds feel better in the sunshine. I know it. I feel it. But my point is, little things like that can change how we feel and what we do on that day and the energy that we present that day. But my point is, right now, even though it might not be raining, we're getting a little damper, right, in our spirits because we're not able to do what we want. However, we can get incredibly creative with what we're doing now. So again, we're hitting that ground running. So my biggest thing would be self-care, physically and mentally. And even though we can't go out and do our social thing that we want to do, there's different ways to do it, and have fun with it, and know that, at least it's sunny out and it's not hailing all the time, or we're in the middle of tornadoes and we can't go outside.
Don't jinx it, Mary Beth. Don't say this.
Yeah, right. Sorry. I take it back. But there's silver lining and there's sunshine, and keep ourselves in a good place. So whenever we are ready to get back, we're going to be in a good place.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I just want to say thank you to everyone who's come on and signed on to this webinar. If nobody's told you today you are doing an awesome job as a coach, or you would not be here. Like, sometimes as a parent you need that, and I'm telling you that as a coach, you're doing an awesome job. I want to thank our panelists. They are fantastic. This is completely them giving their time because they care about this sport and they care about this community. So thank you, Keith, Mary Beth, and Steve. I really, really appreciate it, and I appreciate what you give back to your community. We do have 2 more webinars. Next week it's like a USA Field Hockey Bonanza. We have Sally Goggin and Jen Ortega, who have developed the new youth field hockey, the ADM model. We have Phil Edwards, who's he does high performance, but he also wrote Backyard Hockey. And we have a U.S. national team player coming from Longstreth, and they're going to be talking to parents. So for all the coaches out there, send your parents to us next week, and we're basically going to reassure them that they still don't need to learn all the rules to be supportive of their athletes, because we never expect our parents to learn all the rules. And sometimes it's okay if they don't, because then they scream at our refs. So please send your parents to us for next week. We will also be sending out to you all a recording of this, and there'll be a PDF with some information from Keith, some information from us on some play beyond the game. We call them warm up and cool downs, and how you can incorporate gratitude into what you're doing right now. We think that's really valuable. And we're going to hit up Mary Beth to give us some language on nutrition so we can kind of get over that stigma. So look for that coming into your inbox. Hopefully tonight, like the rest of you are learning, so it might be tomorrow based on our tech standards. So thank you. And then finally, from us, we are a small nonprofit, and if you found value in this or you find a value in anything, you can go to our webpage and give as little as you much or as much as you want. Again, we are so excited to offer these for free for people because we know during the time, and we just love staying connected to our community as well. So we miss getting on the fields as much as you do, and we're happy we can offer this service. So thank you again so much, and hopefully we will see you all next week. But I would say to jump off Mary Beth's point, go out and enjoy that sunshine while we've got it. And we will see everybody on the fields again soon. And thank you so much again to Heidi as well for putting this together.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Thanks.
you all.
Have a great day.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.